Am I the asshole for being unable to forgive my husband for yelling at me while I was in the hospital and seeing this as the nail in the coffin for our marriage? Following my release from the hospital after having our second baby, I was readmitted 1 day later due to severe preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. Since I had a C-section just 4 days prior and my blood pressure put me at risk of having a stroke or seizure, I couldn't drive myself to the hospital. My husband couldn't drive me either because our toddler and newborn were both sleeping. I wanted to take an Uber, but my husband insisted on asking his parents to drive me since they live very close by, whereas my family is all 45 minutes or more away. Since welcoming our first child in 2021, my relationship with his parents has been very strained due to their overbearing nature and lack of boundaries. We even had several sessions with a family therapist to curb their behavior and mend fences. Unfortunately, therapy didn't help, and his parents did not continue therapy on their own as advised by the therapist. I have very limited interaction with them, and my husband's relationship with them is minimal and superficial. His parents don't have a relationship with anyone aside from their 3 kids. My Mael cut off her parents and siblings several years ago due to family drama, and my FIL doesn't talk to his sister either for no apparent reason. I begrudgingly went along with my husband's request to let them drive me to the hospital. Once we arrived, they refused to leave, insisting they needed to stay to help me, and even pushed their way into the ER room. They finally left when I was being transferred back to the maternity unit for treatment around 11 p.m. on a Friday. Once admitted, I was placed on a magnesium sulfate IV drip to prevent me from seizing or having a stroke and to minimize the other side effects of preeclampsia and HELLP. Because my newborn was only 4 days old, they allowed him and my husband to come to the hospital the next morning and stay with me for the few days until I was discharged. During this time, our 2.5-year-old son stayed with my in-laws. By mid-Saturday morning, I received a text from my sister-in-law expressing her concern and prayers as she had heard I was back in the hospital. My in-laws had told her husband all the details of what was going on. I found this incredibly frustrating and inappropriate, as some of the historical issues we had with my in-laws stemmed from their constant over-insertion and gossiping. The medical situation I was in was very serious and incredibly scary, and I felt it was not anyone's right to share, but mine and my husband's, especially given that I had only just been admitted and started treatment hours before. Tests were still being run, and the treatment plan was still being evaluated at this point. As soon as I got the text from my sister-in-law, I expressed my frustration to my husband about his parents sharing my medical details with others. My husband agreed and was frustrated as well, so he left the room to call his parents. He came back several minutes later and told me I should get over it in a very flippant manner. I pressed him, asking why his parents felt it was their place to alert others, and my husband shared a made-up story about how his brother called his parents and heard my toddler in the background and asked why he was there. This was clearly fabricated by either my husband or his parents because minutes later, I got a text from my father-in-law saying he told my brother-in-law because, as a brother, he had the right to know what was going on. At that point, I told my husband that his parents have no discretion and were again overstepping boundaries. My husband, seemingly annoyed by the whole situation, again told me to get over it in a hostile tone and went on to say they're old, so we can't change their behavior. While I agreed with that, it doesn't mean we should ignore and tolerate our boundaries being violated. I then said he needs to pick a side and that yelling at me for their behavior was misplaced anger. He then said that maybe he's not the right person for me because he's not going to push back on them about stuff like this anymore, and I need to live with it. My husband just doesn't like his own boat being rocked, so he plays both sides and gets angry at me when I get upset. This is a constant in our relationship. From my perspective, I was in the hospital for a very serious condition and didn't feel supported by my husband, even though he agreed that his parents' behavior was inappropriate. This is compounded by the fact that we have had several similar incidents with his parents that always result in this same kind of fight. But in this particular scenario, I couldn't believe how my husband was being so mean and unsupportive given the vulnerable and scary situation I was in. And now I can't look at him the same or forgive him. If that's how he treats me in such a sensitive time, is he a partner? I feel this is the straw that broke the camel's back for our marriage. Am I the asshole for not getting over it now?